Hello there, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be making something a little similar to goulash, but not technically a goulash. I'll explain a little bit later, but for now, let's get into it. And for your convenience, here's the ingredients. So a traditional goulash is probably a lot different than what most people think. In the US, somehow, what could be described as hamburger helper oftentimes is what we consider goulash. While that version of it is a tasty dish, it's not very traditional. In Hungary, goulash is more akin to a soup than it is anything. And what we're making today is probably a little closer to a Hungarian Portakalt, I think is how you say that. The steps are mostly the same, but we will be taking a crossroads near the end of our cook to get to where we're going. So try not to freak out too much about it and just kind of bear with me. But with all that long-winded speech out of the way, let's get into the prep. So to get this show on the road, we're just going to take a couple yellow onions. Go ahead and top those bad boys. Cut them in half. Peel that outside layer off. And then we're just going to give those a bit of a rustic cut. Nothing too crazy. Just cut them down into nice little pieces. I'm just going to do that to all my onions. And then go ahead and grab your tomatoes. Top that bad boy. I'm going to cut off this little bit of excess. And then go ahead and cut that into half. Cut that half into half. And then cut those halves into half. And then similar to the tomatoes, get a couple washed russets and do the same thing. Get that sucker in half and then half that half. And then just cut it into little cubes. About like that. Nothing super crazy. And I'm going to do that to both of my potatoes. The prep is genuinely really easy on this for the most part. There's nothing super complicated about it. And the fact that everything's got kind of a simple rustic cut means you don't need great knife skills to get any of this done. And then go ahead and get yourself a pair of bell peppers. Go ahead and top that bad boy. You can cut those seams off the edge. Or lobes, I think they're called. And then just same thing as before. A nice rustic cut. And don't forget all that stuff off the top. It's still good. I hope y'all's fall's starting off nice. Been enjoying getting back into some colder weather, but I know for some of you that just means it's going to be unbearably cold season, and for that, I am sorry. And then go ahead and get yourself 2 large carrots, or in my case, 3 medium-sized carrots. And then same as before, just give it a nice rustic cut. You don't have to do anything too crazy. And then go ahead and get yourself like 2 or 3 large garlic cloves. Cut the bottom off them. Give them the old smash. And then just give those a quick mince. Being really careful with little things like this so you don't cut yourself. That's good enough for me. And then last, but certainly not least, is our meat. I've just got a nice chunk of top sirloin. It's been in the fridge for a couple days, so it's starting to oxidize a little bit, but that's fine. We're not trying to do anything crazy with it. Then all I want to do is cut with the grains of the meat to start out to get these nice little strips. And then after you've got those strips, cut against the grain so that while it's cooking, it helps tenderize it and get all that meat to pull apart from one another and make it super soft and tender. You can use pretty much any cut of meat, top round, sirloin, chuck roast, whatever's on sale and you're in the mood for. Traditionally, goulash is made with a beef shank, but where I am at, that is almost impossible to find, so I'm not even going to bother. And there you are. And with all that cut and ready to go, we're done with the prep work. Now we can move it over to the stove, and I'll meet you for the cook. So the next thing you want to do is go ahead and get yourself a Dutch oven or a pan or a pot or something to cook your meat and your veg and everything else in. I'm using a Dutch oven because the cast iron helps it retain heat well, which makes the cooking process a little bit easier, so just use what you got, do what you can. I'm going to set that to kind of a medium-high heat somewhere. Then we'll just add our meat in a couple batches so we don't overcrowd the pan. And we'll brown it up and try and give it all a nice Maillard. Hit that with a little salt and pepper. Then I'm just going to set those aside. Go ahead and add my next batch. And we'll just go ahead and set those aside as well. Turn my heat down just a little bit so I don't ruin that fond at the bottom. And then in go my onions and my peppers. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my old friend, Spatchy Boy, and just start sauteing those, trying to lift up some of that fond. Go ahead and add my garlic, and then just keep mixing and stirring and letting this kind of saute down. Make sure everybody has a chance to meet the bottom of the pan and make friends with all those flavors. Hit these guys with a little salt and try and get some of the sweat out of those onions and peppers. And what I'm trying to do here is just kind of get my peppers and onions a little soft so I can add the tomatoes. That's close enough. Go ahead and add these tomatoes and let those saute down a little bit, let some of that moisture out. Hit those with just a sprinkle more salt. And I'm trying to constantly scrape that fond on the bottom of the pan. There's more flavor in that fond than there is in an entire piece of meat or anything else in this dish. So the best you can do to get that flavor over everything, the better off you'll be. And while I'm at it, I'm going to make a nice little corner, and I'm going to take my caraway seeds and just kind of let them toast over there for a minute. Help them release a little of that oil and all that deliciousness. And just go ahead and mix all that in together. Then I'm going to add a little bit of my beef stock to deglaze. Scrape all that deliciousness off the bottom. Throw in my paprika and my thyme, cayenne, and marjoram. Mix those into everything. Normally you'd use Hungarian paprika for this. Now, I can't really find it where I'm at, and if you can, it's really expensive. So if you run into it and you decide you want to use that for this, it's going to be more traditional and probably taste a little better, but if all you can get is regular paprika, don't sweat it. Just do what you can. Go ahead and add my carrots to that. I probably could have toasted these carrots some, but it's not a huge deal to me. Then I'm going to add my meat back to it. Throw my potatoes in there and fill it on up with my beef broth. Make sure everything's mixed in there pretty well. And then at this point, all you need to do is bring it up to a boil, and then once it's at a boil, reduce the heat so it's just at a light simmer. And then if you put a top on it and you let it simmer like that for about an hour, hour and a half, you pretty much have goulash. But what I'm going to do is leave it uncovered so that I can evaporate some of that moisture and let it turn into a bit of a thicker kind of porridge, I guess you would say. And with that, I'll see you all in a little bit. Alright, so we're just about there. This has been cooking down for about an hour and 45 minutes or so, and you can see how much thicker it's gotten and how much is evaporated out. Now that this is pretty much ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and finish cooking off my noodles, and I'll see you over at the cutting board for the rest. I'm also using Celentani noodles, if anybody was curious. Again, this is way too thick to be considered a goulash, but, you know, here we are. And then I'm just going to hit that with a little parsley to finish it off. And voila! A delicious dinner. And just to see, I wonder how tender this meat is. I'd say pretty. But if nothing else, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as I like to say, if it's bad for the heart, it's good for the soul. And I'll see you in the next one.